very, very special part of our service today. And this is going to be a reader's theatrical play, The Other Wiseman, and it's a story that's written by Henry Van Dyke, and it's about artaban, the other wise man. And we're going to start it out with special music, Joy to the World, the Christmas medley that was arranged by Stan Bethel and was performed by Deborah, Rebecca, and Miranda Bottom. Enjoy.
have I. Incense on the deity nigh. Prayer and praising, amen raising, worship Him, God on high.
Myrrh is mine, its bitter perfume, breathes a life of gathering gloom, sorrowing, sighing, bleeding, dying, sealed in the stone-cold tomb. Glorious now, behold Him arise, King and God and sacrifice. Alleluia, alleluia, sound through the earth and skies. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
We've all heard the story of the three wise men, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthasar, probably hundreds if not thousands of times. But there is an obscure story, only whispered down through history, of a fourth wise man, and this is his story. In the days when Augustus Caesar was the ruler of many kings, including Herod, who reigned in Jerusalem, there lived among the mountains of Persia a certain man named Artaban.
Artaban was one of the Magi, men who study the heavens in search of truth about God. He and three of his friends from afar had discovered in the ancient writings a promise that at a special time a beautiful new star would rise in the eastern sky. At the rising of that perfect star, a great king would be born. He would be the truth sent from the one God, the Son of the Most High.
Artaban believed the time was very near. He had sold his house and all he owned to buy 3 jewels to carry as gifts for the newborn king.
Now as the sun began to set, Artaban reached into his color-filled silk tunic and brought out the 3 great gems.
A sapphire as blue as a Persian sky at night.
A ruby as red as the first rays of sunrise.
A pearl as white and pure as a Christmas Eve snow.
Artaban held the priceless gems together in his hands and gazed into the darkening sky.
That was when he first saw the tiny spark on the horizon. He watched it grow larger and larger as it rose higher into the sky, with flashes of light surrounding it. Artaban exclaimed,
"The king is coming, and I will go to meet him."
Artaban's 3 friends had said they would wait for him only 10 days. After sighting the star, he knew he must race to meet them at the Temple of Babylon, or they would never leave to see the king without him.
Quickly saddling Vazda, his fastest horse, Artaban galloped off, barely stopping for food or drink. He rode across brown mountain slopes and level green plains. He picked his way carefully over rocky mountain passes and crossed swirling rivers.
Poor Vasta was exhausted and could hardly walk as night fell on the 10th day. But Artaban urged his horse onward. Suddenly Vasta stopped, and Artaban saw something in the road. He approached the dark shape for a closer look. It was the body of a man.
The man seemed dead, but as Artaban turned to go, the poor man reached out one hand and grasped the hem of the wise man's robe. The man was still alive. If Artaban nursed him, the man would recover quickly, but Artaban would be too late to meet his friends at the temple. He turned his eyes toward the star he had been following and prayed.
God of truth and purity, direct me in the holy path, the way of wisdom, which thou only knowest.
Artaban turned back to the sick man and carried him to the foot of a palm tree. There he gave the poor fellow cool water and a healing potion from the remedies he always carried. For several hours, Artaban cared for the man as he slowly regained strength. Finally, the man awoke fully and asked,
Who art thou?
My name is Artaban. I am a magi, and I am on a quest to Jerusalem with special gifts to give to the newborn Messiah.
Now may the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob bless and prosper the journey of the merciful, and bring him in peace to his desired haven. Stay, I have nothing to give thee in return, only this, that I can tell thee where the Messiah must be sought. For our prophets have said that he should not be born in Jerusalem, but in Bethlehem of Judea. May the Lord bring thee in safety to that place, because thou hast had pity upon the sick.
Thanking the man, Artaban galloped off toward the temple, but the sun's first rays were shining as they entered the grounds. Anxiously, Artaban searched for his friends, but they were gone. He found a note which read, "We have waited for 3 past midnight and can delay no longer. We go to find the king. Follow us across the desert." Artaban sat upon the ground in despair.
How can I cross the desert with no food and an exhausted horse? I must return to Babylon to sell my sapphire and buy a camel and food for the journey. Only God knows whether I will lose my chance to find the king because I stopped to show mercy.
And so Artaban sold his precious sapphire, bought a camel and supplies, and set out across the desolate desert. After many weeks, Artaban arrived in Bethlehem. He came upon a stone cottage. Sitting inside was a young woman rocking her baby to sleep. Artaban knocked at the open door, and the woman motioned for him to enter. Artaban asked the woman about his 3 friends and the baby for whom he searched.
Yes, there were strangers from the east who appeared in the village 3 days ago. And they said the star had guided them to a place where the carpenter, his wife, and their newborn son were to be found. The strangers paid reverence to the baby and gave him many rich gifts. But as suddenly as the strangers appeared, they disappeared. We were afraid at the strangeness of their visit. The carpenter took his wife and their baby and fled into the night. It is whispered they are going to Egypt.
Artaban's heart sank. He had failed once more. Suddenly there came the noise of wild confusion and uproar in the street. Women screamed, men cried out, and the clanging of swords and armor filled the air. Artaban ran to the doorway of the cottage as the woman snatched up her baby and hid in the shadows of the room.
The soldiers came hurrying down the street with bloody hands and dripping swords. The soldiers of Herod are coming for our children. The shouts filled the air as a towering centurion approached the tiny cottage. Artaban stood with determination, filling the doorway, and glared into the soldier's eyes. Then he slowly reached into his tunic and brought out the huge ruby, watching the soldier's face gleam with greed.
I am all alone here and waiting to give this gem to the centurion who will leave me in peace.
Quickly the soldier snatched the jewel, then turned and shouted, "March on! There is no child here." The soldiers ran on down the street, leaving Artaban and the grateful mother weak with relief.
O God of truth, forgive my sin. I have told a lie to save the life of a child, and 2 of my gifts are gone. I have spent for man that which was meant for God. Shall I ever be worthy to see the face of the King?
Because thou hast saved the life of my little one, may the Lord bless thee and keep thee. May the Lord make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift his countenance upon thee and give thee peace.
The next morning, Artaban decided to follow the baby king and his family into the land of Egypt. But his task was not an easy one. Month after month and year after year, Artaban searched for his king. He traveled to the pyramids and the Sphinx, to the palaces of the Pharaoh and the river Nile. But always the answer was the same: no king was to be found.
Although he did not find anyone to worship, he found many to help. He fed the hungry and bought clothes for the naked. He cared for the sick and visited those in prison. Still, he carried the beautiful pearl close to his heart, hoping one day to present it to the one he continued to seek.
After 33 years of searching, Artaban had grown very old and tired. His hair, once darker than the cliffs of Zagros, was now white as the wintry snow that covered them. His eyes, that once flashed like flames of fire, were as dull as embers smoldering among the ashes. But he decided to take one last journey. He thought that perhaps he might find the clue that would at last lead him to the king. Arriving in Jerusalem, Artaban watched a pushing, shouting crowd in the narrow streets.
What is this uproar? Where is everyone going?
Have you not heard? We're going to the place called Golgotha, outside the city walls where there's to be an execution. 2 famous robbers are to be crucified, and with them another, called Jesus of Nazareth, a man who has done many wonderful works among the people, so that they love him greatly. But the priests and elders have said that he must die, because he gave himself out to be the Son of God. And Pilate has sent him to the cross, because he said that he was the King of the Jews.
Artaban's heart raced. Could it be that he had found his king at last? Perhaps if he hurried, he could arrive in time and offer his great pearl to the enemies of the king and rescue him before he died. Gathering his robes around him, Artaban hurried up the dusty street. Just before he reached the city gates, he was stopped by a troop of soldiers, dragging a young girl whose hair and dress were tangled and torn.
Have pity, kind sir. My father died, owing these men a great sum of money. I am to be sold as a slave to pay the debt. Please save me from a life worse than death.
Artaban was so close to the end of his search for his king. Could he give it all up now? Then he looked into the eyes of the helpless girl. One thing was certain: rescuing her would be a true deed of love. And wasn't the ability to love the gift of the one true God?
Here, child, take this pearl as your ransom. It is the last of my treasures, which were to be given to the king.
At that moment, the sky darkened, and echoing peals of thunder rumbled through the hot streets of Jerusalem. The walls of the houses rocked to and fro as the earth rolled like the waves of the sea. The soldiers fled in terror, leaving Artaban and the girl alone. Suddenly, a heavy section of roof tile broke loose and crashed down on the other wise men. As Artaban fell to the ground, he heard a quiet yet insistent voice speak to him over the thunder.
Artaban, the voice called softly, you have been a good and faithful servant. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was naked, and you brought me clothes. I was in prison, and you visited me. Come now to the rest I have prepared for you.
Not so, Lord. When did I do all these things for you?
And the voice answered, Verily I say unto thee, inasmuch as thou hast done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, thou hast done it unto me.
The peace of understanding fell upon Artaban's soul like a gentle rain, and he smiled. His journey on earth was ended. His treasures were accepted. The other wise men had found the king. And now, we all know the story of Artaban, the other wise man.